My name is Dan Dorval, and I'm President and CEO of Dorval and Chorne Financial Advisors. I am an independent certified financial planner and author of my book, Financial Success for the Rest of Us, Reality-Based Financial Planning for Mainstream America.
Hi, my name is Leah Woodley. I'm an associate financial advisor with Dorval and Chorne Financial Advisors. Our conversations discuss what it means to do quality of life planning in all areas of your life. Well, Dan, this was a very eventful week. I know we both had various meetings. So, why don't you tell us what happened in your meetings?
Well, one of my biggest things this week that I think viewers will find interesting wasn't actually a meeting. It was an email. And this email came in the middle of the night from one of our clients. She is 69 years old. Her husband, unfortunately, is in a nursing home with dementia. For
Mm.
the first time in her life, she is responsible for essentially making all of the financial decisions. And she's very insecure about that. She operates kind of in a world with a lot of fear. And the email was that she had met with her insurance agent, and her insurance agent talked her into buying a $50,000 whole life insurance policy on herself. And she's healthy, everything's okay with her. We would expect her to live potentially a long time, with the idea that if she died, then the death benefit might be used to help her husband in the nursing home. Now, to add to this story, they have long-term care insurance. And the long-term care insurance is paying most of the cost associated with her husband being in the nursing home. So that's all working out the way it was supposed to work out. And they don't have a ton of cash flow. They don't have a lot of extra money. And this whole life policy costs $2,600 a year. And that's going to eat in her ability to maintain quality of life. And so part of the reason she did this is she read an article in our local newspaper, and it said a lot of people are having issues with long-term care insurance companies not paying out. And that was not her problem. They're paying out, it's covering the costs, things are working, it's a robust policy, it's working exactly the way it's supposed to. Yet she felt this really deep-seated fear. And the agent, instead of kind of walking her away from that fear and assuring her, just took that as an opportunity to essentially manipulate it into a form of a sale. And so I replied to her. I said, you don't need to have life insurance for you. Her kids are going to inherit like the house and some other assets that they have. And so, I just assured her she doesn't need to do that. And she was questioning it and really like leaning towards canceling the policy. Well, now she's going to cancel during this like free look period before the policy is, fully implemented. And I want to remind our viewers that elder abuse is a big deal. And as people get older, they have to make decisions maybe on their own where they don't have somebody to bounce these ideas off of. It is really hard to make these complicated decisions from a place of fear. And she replied to me after I, responded to her. She replied and she said, I just needed that confidence from somebody else, just a different perspective. And I trust your perspective that, I don't actually need this policy and it doesn't actually make sense because my agent had talked me into doing it. So I think that was one of the biggest, most profound, uh, I guess, client experiences that I had this week. It wasn't specifically a meeting, but I think a lot of people will relate to the idea, whether they've been divorced, whether they're widowed, whether their spouse is incapacitated in some way, and all of a sudden they're pushed into this position of having to make decisions. It's really hard. So I understand you've had some interesting meetings this week. Why don't you share your story?
Yeah, before I do, I just want to comment on your story. I think that one, it goes back to the importance of just having someone in your corner. Because if she didn't have you, what would she have done? And also trying to get on the same page or have an understanding of what's going on. I would say earlier in life, just being on the same page with finances and having an understanding. I know a lot of times there's always one spouse that doesn't want to get into the weeds of things, but just having a basic understanding of what's going on is important. And that whole fear concept goes back to our annuity discussion,
Yeah.
where there are a lot of salespeople who are targeting people that are in a position of fear and just preying on that. And it can be detrimental. So I'm glad that she had you in her corner to get another frame of reference and another perspective.
Well, and you might think that, well, her family, her kids could be involved in that process and be an important part of that. But for a lot of these older adults, they don't want to be a burden. They don't want to
Yeah,
involve their kids. And, they don't feel like that's something that they should be putting on them. So to have an independent advisor be able to reach out, be able to ask these questions, and just get some reassurance rather than just inflaming that fear or anxiety or concerns in order to sell something. I mean, it's one of the more valuable things we do for our clients that are getting older.
I definitely agree. Well, in my meeting, I met with a couple. They were in their late 40s, early 50s, and they had a goal of moving within the next few years. There were a couple of things that came out of the meeting. One, I saw the importance of investing early, saving early for retirement. The husband had one of the more larger 401k balances that I've seen. And it seemed like he just probably started saving very early and just was consistent, um, throughout his lifetime. So that was important. And he wasn't someone making six figures. So I know a lot of people think you have to make a lot of money to be able to save for retirement. And he was not making six figures, but he had a very substantial 401k balance. So I thought that was great to see. One thing with their move, there were some competing priorities, and we see that. So they also had some debt they wanted to pay off, and they wanted to retire early as well. And so there's sometimes a part where you have to just navigate these competing priorities and see what's more important and what's going to bring you quality of life. But you also have to have that firm financial foundation established, because as you always say, life is messy. So you don't know what's going to happen. They didn't have a lot in emergency reserve. So we kind of had to focus on them establishing that solid financial foundation by paying off that debt, building up emergency reserves, and then focusing on that move. One thing that came up with the move was they weren't clear on what that would look like. And for me, it was kind of like, say you want to go somewhere, you want to go somewhere, and you get in your car and you have to tell the GPS where you want to go, but you don't know where you want to go. So that's how I felt with that meeting. It was like they knew they wanted to move, but they didn't really have a clear direction on that. Maybe you want to go to a beach. I live in Maryland. We have some local beaches. We also have Ocean City. If I go to a local beach, that's not going to require too much effort. If I go to Ocean City, there's a little more planning that is involved and resources that would need to be involved. And so it's really important that our clients are clear on what they want to do. And sometimes we can help to offer some perspective on what that could look like. But at the end of the day, it's their quality of life and it's their move. So we can't make any decisions for them. So what are
So
your
how
thoughts?
did you end up helping them? Like, where did you leave this conversation?
So I left this conversation one by having them to focus on paying off debt. They had a lot of debt and a lot of high interest debt. In regards to the move, I was able to show them what moving would look like in comparison to what they're allocating right now to housing. So they currently have their primary residence and they had a certain mortgage payment that they're paying. So I was able to tell them what a lateral move would look like for them. So that gave them some type of perspective, but ultimately they still need to, figure out what that is going to look like for them.
So did you have them reduce contributions to their retirement
I
plans? Yeah.
did. I absolutely did. I'm glad you brought that up. I did have them reduce their retirement plan contributions. I think the husband was contributing about 15 to 16% to his 401k. So I had him reduce that down to his employer match. So that freed up some cash flow to allocate towards those other things. And the wife doesn't get a match at all. So I had her reduce her contributions down as well. And that's something that's really important because you can take these extra resources to realign them towards things that are more of a high priority at this moment. So
Well, and so often we see people just get out of balance
yeah,
where they're so focused on one puzzle piece, like saving for retirement or whatever it happens to be, and then getting that outside perspective where we're not emotionally attached to their finances and we just view
yeah,
it with this objective lens and say, hey, you don't need to save so much over here. What you
yeah,
really need to do is you've got this major quality of life priority over here. Why don't we just shift some of these resources, get you into a better balance? It doesn't mean you shouldn't save for retirement. It means you did such a good job of saving for retirement in the past that now you could save a little bit less and still accomplish more of your quality of life goals rather than just really hitting one thing hard.
exactly. And the wife was a nurse, so she gets a pension. So I explained to her that you're still contributing to your retirement through your pension. So you still have that, but that's something we encounter a lot. Sometimes people do need to make adjustments and realignments in order to accomplish their goals. So,
And a lot of times it's a major life change that causes that shift.
yeah,
So all of a sudden somebody experiences a job change, a move, they get married, they have children, they retire, there's all these different major life events. And then that's when shifting from one priority to another, they feel uncomfortable doing that, but
yeah,
that's where we have probably the greatest value.
I agree. I agree. So, anything else you want to bring up for this week?
The only other quick thing is we are really seeing companies get a lot more aggressive with like old 401k plans where if you have a significant balance, and significant balance might be, hundreds of thousands of dollars, the big custodians, and I'm not going to name names, but these big custodians that everybody will have heard of, and they sponsor a lot of 401ks, they're getting more aggressive in pursuing rollovers from your old 401k or even your current 401k, especially if you're over the age of 59 and a half. And they're trying to get you to roll that into an IRA before you ever really need to. And the reason they're doing it is they can collect advisory fees. So these people work for the custodian. They then move you into an IRA at the custodian. These are not independent advisors. They now charge you an advisory fee and they're paid to do that. So we saw one this week at one of the largest 401k custodians. They have their own advisors. Person met with this advisor and got rolled over into an IRA with all proprietary funds from that specific company. And I told them, I go, you could have literally done a target date fund at that
Mhm,
company and ended up with almost the exact same allocation, same types of funds, same types of like fund fees, and they would have
mhm,
avoided a 1.15% advisory fee on like $350,000. So it would have been over $4,000 a year that they would save on advisory fees. And they hadn't met with this person who talked them into it for over a year. So it's not like this person was providing any sort of planning or
mhm.
advice or putting the puzzle pieces together. They're literally just seeing one puzzle piece and that's it. And we just find that that process has very little value for most people, but it's becoming more common. So if these people are reaching out to our viewers and trying to convince them to do this, probably not in your best interest until maybe you retire. And instead of putting money in, you're now thinking about taking money out. That's a very appropriate time to move to an IRA.
Exactly. And I think that goes back to some of these predatory practices. It's
And we
really unfortunate.
we see it all the time. I mean,
Yeah,
it's becoming more and more common because it's just a marketing technique.
it is. It is. So beware, especially when you get in your late 50s, early 60s. Beware of those calls.
Yep.
Well, as always, it was a great time speaking with you. I do want to encourage our viewers, if you know any nurses that are improving the quality of life of others, that could be their patients, other nurses, people in their community, please nominate them for the Quality of Life Nurse Award. We have given out a few awards already. We have one coming up in July. But we want you to nominate a nurse who you feel is exemplifying quality of life. We announce the winners on the first Thursday of every month. Now, for July, it's going to be a little different because that's a holiday. So we will be announcing it on July 5th. However, for every other month, it'll be the first Thursday of every month. They will receive a $500 cash award. So please nominate your favorite nurse today.
Sounds good,
All right.
Leah. Thanks for having this conversation.
Thank you.